What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, part of the All-City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined by the Oracle of the Mavericks himself, Tim Legler. Legs, how are you doing?
I'm great, man. I'm great. Look, it's not like I'm losing sleep if they lose, but you see things a certain way as an analyst, and I thought a lot of the things that I thought gave Dallas an advantage took place in Game 1, and that's what I was kind of waiting to see, like everybody else. And it starts with the guys that they have to throw at Luka. For me, that was a big part of my reasoning and why. And look, this series is a long way from over. Minnesota could win this series. I'm not going to be shocked by that at all. But certainly getting Game 1, man, that gives you a leg up. You've now taken home court advantage. And more importantly, the things that I thought would be an advantage were an advantage. But then there's a lot more to it. The way that they defended Minnesota was a major part of what happened last night and what that led Minnesota to do. But for me, the basis of the argument was these guys are not going to affect Luka the way that he was affected in the last series. And I will say this, he also looked a lot healthier last night. I don't know if you thought that.
Yeah,
I didn't see him limping at any point, even though he had the Kurt Schilling bloody leg going. I didn't see him limping at any point the way he had been in the previous 2 rounds. So he probably feels a little bit better with a little bit of rest. And I just thought he operated in a place of real comfort as a scorer, primarily late with that. But the rest of the game, even just controlling it, man, getting down in there. And then I call them those late finds. He had a bunch of those in this game, and he just looked comfortable like the entire time. And that's what I thought he was going to look like. And he did. And I want to see if Minnesota has some sort of an answer for that or some adjustment they're going to make.
We're going to dive deep into that one. We have a bit of a shorter show today. Legs and I both on the move today quite a bit, so it might only be about a 35, 40-minute show, but we're going to go deep on the Mavericks and get into that series, as well as deep on the Wolves. I thought they have some interesting things to discuss. That was a great game, but we will touch on, at the end, the Pacers series with the Celtics, which was also equally as fantastic as the game, although a little bit more bizarre down the stretch. So we'll hit on all of that today and more. So we are presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. So the Mavericks get the win on the road in Game 1, 108-105. And they did it behind their dynamic duo going off in equal measure. Kyrie in the first half dominating, getting where he wants on the court, putting pressure on the defense. And in the second half, Luka doing the exact same. That's the 1-2 punch that makes teams, you make an adjustment, say we got to shut down this guy, and then the other guy gets going. That's the vision when you have a two-headed monster as on offense, and it worked to perfection for the Mavericks. Let's start on that end of the floor. How were they able to dominate their possessions and to both have great games in the same game?
I think, let's talk about the first half because I thought that was so important for Kyrie. And I said it, if you recall, I said it going in. Like, he's not going to get away with being a guy that picks his spots in the first half. Like he has the last couple games. Like he has really throughout the playoffs. Not against this team because of the amount of attention. Luka's going to get at the beginning, and you don't know if guys are going to make shots. Kyrie is so capable of kind of putting himself in a mindset where you're not really going to stop him because you just shut him down with any personnel. Like Luka, he's not really affected by much because he's so quick, his handle's so good, and he's got great range, and he's an incredible finisher. It's the mindset part. And I thought right off the bat, and it was funny, I had fun with him after the game, talking about Anthony Edwards saying his name, at the end of Game 7, and how much that really played into it. And he was joking. I don't believe that he was sitting there thinking that Anthony Edwards was firing shots across his bow. But it was kind of interesting. Like, guys don't typically say another player's name from the next series right when they win one series. And that was kind of weird for all of us. And if it had anything to do with his aggressive mindset at the start, well, then he helped Dallas win the game, Anthony Edwards. But Kyrie was clearly in a mode where every time he caught it, the motor was running, man. His engine was idling, ready to go when he got his hands on the ball. And that hasn't been the case lately, particularly in the first quarter. So I thought that was important. If he doesn't have that half, Adam, that he had, they might be down 10-12 because Minnesota was shooting lights out from the three. If Kyrie is not matching a lot of that, they might go down 12-15 at half. It's a totally different feel to the game. As it was what, a 3-point game at halftime. That was because of Kyrie Irving. And so that's first half. Now you come out, now it's going to be kind of let's just like slug it out possession by possession the rest of the game until you get to the fourth quarter. And then Luka Doncic, because he's not at that point totally gassed of these wrestling matches with Lou Dort, which that was literally like a couple of heavyweight fighters, as much contact as was going on. That takes your legs. He wasn't dealing with that. These guys are long and athletic, but they're not heavy. They're not heavy. Heavy is what wears you out, not athleticism and length. Heavy. That's what takes your legs. He's not dealing with heavy in this series. So he was able to come off those ball screens, probe, take his time. Nobody was speeding him up. And then all of a sudden, boom, a little shoulder into McDaniel's chest. He goes backwards. Luka steps, separates. Biggest shot of the game, 18-foot jumper. See how easily he created space against him? When he was hitting Dort with that, Dort wasn't moving backwards at all. And so the shot was tougher, and it was also more exhausting. So I think Luka knew how he felt, and he was going to be able to do that when it was needed, and it was needed. The last 8 minutes of that game, it was all about Luka offensively. Now, you're always going to get help. P.J. Washington had a huge corner three. Kyrie made some big free throws, and they had a couple other guys get some stuff around the paint. But it was Luka. That was Luka's show. He took the ball. He put it on his hip. He sensed that they could take control, or at least get home court if they get this game. And they, unlike Indiana, who played well enough to win, Dallas looked at it like, we're in a position to win. We're going to win because we've got the best closer in the league, certainly the best closer playing right now. And that's what Luka did. He brought it home. He closed the deal because he is very comfortable against this team and what defensively they can throw at him.
And that's the difference between this series and the last one for the Timberwolves. Last one, okay, you have Rudy Gobert and 2 additional bodies to throw at Jokic, the other team's offensive hub. And then Jamal Murray, you have the wings that were bothered him in a way where he wasn't able to overcome, in that series. This round, you talk about the first half. What was so fascinating to me was the Wolves hit some big-time shots, some lucky shots. And typically, especially in the previous 2 series, when they scored and set their defense, that was it. They were going to create runs. So big shot making helped them get that snowball effect. There wasn't a snowball effect in this game. Really, it was Kyrie kept responding, but it was them as a whole kept responding every time they would hit a big three, every time they'd get a little 5-0 run. The Mavericks would come down and squash it, and Minnesota never got a chance to really get that 8-0 run, 10-0 run that they've kind of hung their hat on this entire playoffs. So the shot making early on to me by Kyrie was a big part of it. But you're right, and I want to touch on another thing you said. Luka was fresh in the fourth quarter. Anthony Edwards was not fresh. And I talked to a Nuggets person, the season ends, you go through game 7, and I said, well, do you think they would have beat Dallas in the next round? He goes, man, I don't know. I know our team had nothing left, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Timberwolves suffer a little bit early in the series because of how exhausting that last one was. Now, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but Anthony Edwards has never looked as tired as he did in the fourth quarter. There was 2 or 3 possessions in a row where he didn't move. He walked up, and this was clutch time, last 5 minutes, and he's standing there with his hands on his knees. The ball comes to him, and he almost holds it for a few seconds, thinking, I got to gather myself before I go. I think that actually played a factor in this, and I'm not really sure why Anthony Edwards was worn down to the degree he was.
Me either, and I thought he said some things after the game. He made a statement. He said about 4 or 5 things I completely disagreed with, and then he said one thing that I totally agreed with. So here's some of the things he said that I didn't agree with. We came out flat. What are you talking about? They had 33 points. They had 33 points in the first quarter, and they made every shot early, and they hit them with a big punch. Flat only exists in 2 places: when you start the game and when you start the second half. That's the only time flat is an issue. If you don't exhibit that at the start of the game, I got news for you. You're not flat. Now, the reason I said start at second half, sometimes teams can go into a locker room up 15, 18, and they come out and they're a little bit complacent. Actually, I would say more complacent than flat, but it can look flat. And then the other team makes a run. That's the only reason I threw the start of the third quarter in there. For the most part, this is the first 6 minutes of the game when you're flat. They were not flat. That team had energy. The building was rocking. I called game 3 of the Minnesota series. It was the first game in that building, Adam, when Denver was down 0-2. I was there for that game. That was flat. The crowd never got into the game because Minnesota didn't give them a reason to. That's not what I saw last night. So I disagree with that. He also said this was all about us. No, it wasn't. This had a lot to do with the Dallas Mavericks and a lot to do with 2 great offensive players. It had a lot to do with a team that is almost on par with you defensively, because I really believe that. They're a top-tier defensive team, and it had to do with closing the game on both ends. So Dallas had a lot to do with that. This wasn't all about, oh, we were flat and then we just didn't play well. I don't buy that. And then the fatigue factor, I don't get that. He's 22 years old. Game 7 takes a lot out of you. I get it. They didn't have to play Sunday, Tuesday. They played Sunday, Wednesday. Right. You got an extra day. Okay. Now, chasing Kyrie isn't necessarily something that's going to be fun to do. And when Kyrie's playing that aggressively, that probably gassed him because he wasn't dealing with Luka that much, which is in its own right exhausting. But Anthony Edwards was chasing a lot more. He was guarding a guy with an electric dribble that was coming at him downhill. And Anthony Edwards is spending a lot of time back on his heels and chasing that guy around. So that's the one thing I'd say buy into it. But the one thing he really said, finally, I was like, okay, now you're getting to the crux of this. I didn't play downhill enough. That was the one thing I said. Well, you're right about that. 3/4 of his shots were threes, 12 out of 16 attempts. That ratio and that balance is terrible for the overall as a team, 49 threes. They had only taken 40 in a game once in the postseason. By far, their highest number of threes were last night. And the reason, because they were treating him like Giannis. I call it Giannis defense. One guy on the ball when he's at the top of the key, 2 guys at the elbows, 2 guys on the block. That's what Giannis looked like the year that they lost to Toronto. That's how they guarded him. That's what it looked like last night. And Anthony Edwards is looking up, seeing nothing but bodies in traffic. And it led to a bunch of 3-point shots. It led to him not being as aggressive. I think there's opportunities, we'll get into it in a second, where he can get downhill more. Why and how he plays early in the offense. But last night, there's no question. Dallas's strategy was we are going to protect the paint at all costs. Take as many threes as you want. You're going to cool off. They were 11 for 25 in the first half, 7 for 24 in the second half. Dallas ultimately had that strategy pay off in a big way. And Anthony Edwards never put his imprint on this game as that freak athlete that we know him to be that puts pressure on defenses in the paint. He never did it.
This is why when you follow a great player's career arc, it's so fascinating in the playoffs, because Anthony Edwards is obviously leveling up as a player. But one of the ways you level up is by seeing different defensive strategies and different defensive personnel game after game. Series after series, because it's always different. So what's different between the last 2 really and this one is rim protection behind all of it. You've got athletic bigs that are the third line of defense essentially in the way that they're guarding him. You have the on-ball defender, which he can solve. Then you have them packing the paint. You're saying they're shrinking it. Unlike Denver, who set a trap, and so those passes, you swing it, you get the ball out, and somebody has to make a play. They're just really playing off of the shooters, daring you to make that pass, and then they'll close out on them. But they're not doubling. They're just packing the paint.
Right.
But if you happen to beat that, which, again, Anthony Edwards is a great enough player, I think he can beat that. It's still going to slow him down, but he can collapse the defense. But now you have a third line of defense, which is the rim protection of Gafford and Lively and even Derek Jones as a rotator and all these different bodies. So if you somehow manage to break the first 2 lines of defense, you have to finish strong over those guys. And that's a completely different look than what we've seen in the previous 2 rounds. And look, Anthony Edwards solved when Denver made adjustments, solved when Phoenix made adjustments, but this is one that is probably going to take something else from him. So you said you had some ideas. What are those ideas that he would have to, to get him going?
For Anthony Edwards, I think the biggest thing is, I've talked often about guys like just playing too slowly. I criticized Luka for this in the last round. I think you're playing too slow, and it's really not about, I understand Luka's not a super quick player. Anthony Edwards is. It's about how quickly you try to create action, like up the floor over half court to get the defense to shift right away. And that wasn't the case last night. If you look at how many times Anthony Edwards got the ball back, the second time he was like at the top of the key, they were kind of all just standing there. He's looking at this 5 guys in the paint defense. And now it's impossible. So what would he go to? The one shot he knows he can get off at that point, which is like a rise up, pull off the dribble three. By the way, you take 12 threes in a game, and I don't think he took a catch and shoot, if I recall. All those are off the dribble. That also is tiring, by the way. It's not like this isn't 12 threes that Klay Thompson would take that are almost like practice shots for him. These are ones where you got to generate force, get to a spot, elevate at 25 feet, and shoot these shots. And that's all that was left for him by the time that they kind of started to get serious about their offense. I just don't think they played with any kind of intent early in the clock. If you want to see the model for that, watch the Indiana Pacers. Like right off the bat, they're in actions, and they're going to have 4 or 5 quick hitting actions on a possession, and then it ends up in the hands of a great shooter with space. And they got a ton of them. Minnesota didn't do that, man. They took the first decent 3 they got, which is okay. I don't think it's a formula to win against Dallas. That's what they want you to take. It's not like Minnesota's a prolific 3-point shooting team. They were taking that shot. And then the ones they got later were more difficult later in the clock. They were getting very little penetration from Conley, Edwards, McDaniels, any of those guys. And so for me, for Anthony Edwards, and I guarantee you, Adam, you're going to see a noticeable difference in the first quarter of game 2. He has the ability to do that after one of these games. I've seen it repeatedly from him all season and in the playoffs. He has a game like this where he feels like he was subpar and he wasn't attacking enough. You see what he's capable of doing, and he did it even in the Minnesota-Denver series when he dropped 44 or whatever it was in that next game after he was being criticized. Anthony Edwards is capable. He's going to do it. He's going to adjust. The question I have is, despite that, what are they going to do to affect Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving on the other end? I think that's going to be a problem the entire series, despite how great they are defensively. These are 2 different levels of offensive players that on the perimeter, particularly with Luka, totally different animal that you're trying to stop here. And that's, to me, the biggest issue. I think Minnesota's going to be better offensively next game. I don't know defensively what you do with Dallas that's going to be different.
Well, I might even disagree with you. I don't know if they're going to be better offensively in game 2. And whenever you get into a game 1, you look at the result and you look at the process. The result was the Mavericks won. They win the game. They steal game 1. But the process, in my opinion, was also great for Dallas. You look at what Dallas did in that game and you say, is it repeatable? Were there outlier performances? No, they did what they like to do and they executed it. Whereas you go to the other side and you say Minnesota got a really good shooting game out of Jaden McDaniels. Dallas said, we're going to dare you to make the others make shots. And if you beat us with that, so be it. And they made shots and still didn't win. So to me, I look at it and I say the result favored Dallas, but I think the process also favored them. And then when you talk about what adjustments do you get to, look, Minnesota will make defensive adjustments, but their favorite bread and butter defense that makes them so good is 1, on-ball pressure from their guards. Well, that didn't affect Kyrie. In fact, it might have worn out the guys guarding Kyrie. That didn't affect Luka Doncic. In fact, he was able to rest most of the game and had energy at the end and got to his spots as you referenced. And then to drop Rudy Gobert. But those 2 guys are very good at attacking drop. We talked about this in the preview. Luka is so good at that late lob. He had 2 in a row to Daniel Gafford late in this game that were just like perfectly timed, waited to the last second, threw it, and it was a wide open dunk. So to me, that's the thing that's so interesting in this series. I don't know. Minnesota's going to almost immediately either improve their base defense or change their base defense. And that's the thing that I think would be concerning for me if I'm a Wolves fan.
I completely agree. Like the fact that this is a team that was the number 1 ranked defensive team in the league. We all knew it. We gave them credit for it all year. And then game 2 in the Denver series happened. And then it became this almost mythical like level defense, right? Like, oh my, never seen anything like it. This is the most suffocating defense in the world. How is anybody going to beat this team? And so if you now go into a game 2 and you're kind of like wondering, how are we going to affect this team? Like, what do we have to do differently? I agree with you. That is concerning for Minnesota because they've typically just shown up and they've just been longer, quicker, and deeper defensively than what you have offensively. And they have great size at the rim. And that's been enough. No matter what the game plan or what they did, let's just fly around the court, wreak havoc, and funnel everything to our bigs in the paint. Oh, I got news for you. There's a guy on the other side that's controlling the action, unlike any player they're going to play, including Jokic, because Luka Doncic is a point guard, And it's different when you have a point guard on the perimeter that operates like a point guard, but then plays like a center like Jokic in the paint, because that's what Luka does once he gets down there. And so you got the best of both worlds almost in one player offensively. Minnesota doesn't have but so many answers from a personnel standpoint. So it's got to be schematic. It has to be some other way to try to hit Luka in a way that you can limit him. And if that happens, are you able to also contain Kyrie at the same time? That's the big challenge for them going forward. It'd be interesting to see. And by the way, real quick, before you ask the next question, we've gone too far into this show right now without mentioning really the 19 points and 20 rebounds they got out of their center position. I mean, those two guys were incredible in this game. Lively in particular, in some of the ways he stopped Rudy Gobert alone down there when it looked like Gobert was going to get something easy, or either on a catch, to finish a play, or off the offensive glass. Lively was battling him to such an extent that Gobert had, I'd say, 4 or 5 different plays where he didn't come up with an offensive rebound that I thought was going to be a putback, or he didn't finish a play. Of course, Luka had, I think, the defensive play of his career breaking up that lob. I'm not even overstating that. That backpedaling jump blocked that lob play. That's the best defensive play I've ever seen Luka Doncic make. Saved the game. It's a 2-point game when that happens. What they did around the rim and around the basket defensively and on the glass with those two guys, man, 19 points, 20 boards out of your center spot. Yeah, sign me up for that in the playoffs. I'm going to be good with that.
So what do you see now in game 2? Like, what are you looking for? What's the number one thing that Minnesota is going to have to do, or that you see them doing as they adjust to game 2?
I think the first is Anthony Edwards' aggressiveness with his mindset. And look, sometimes when you're a guy that's that explosive and athletic, you got turbochargers right on your shoes. And sometimes, man, you just got to go and trust your athletic ability once you get down there. He wasn't even really trying to get in gaps. And I know the defense was what I described, but I also think if you're Anthony Edwards, you're strong with the ball. If you can just get one step in that gap and take off and get on the launch pad, like, number one, you're going to finish some of those. 2, you're going to get some fouls. But 3, you're going to force Lively and Gafford to react to you, which is going to free up the offensive rebounding. This happened a lot in the Denver series. You don't necessarily even have to finish the play, but what you have to do is get Gafford or Lively to make a play on you, which frees up someone for a running start at the offensive glass on the opposite side. Dallas would have a problem with that. They're not a very big team. That would be a problem if you got Towns and you got Gobert on that weak side, even McDaniels sometimes. But you don't get that if Anthony Edwards doesn't engage that defender, that backline defender. He did not do that in this game really at all. So as a result, Lively or Gafford was seeing the shot go up. Now they could turn and run and go try to hit Gobert and engage with Gobert. That's not the case if you're trying to go affect Anthony Edwards' drives. So you're going to see a totally different mentality with Anthony Edwards in getting in gaps, taking off, and trying to make something happen, because it leads to good stuff for some other guys too, because the defense has to react to you.
I'm also curious, for me personally, I'm also curious what else Cat can do. I mean, he missed a lot of shots. He was 6 of 20 in this game. But I also wonder if he's another guy that can put pressure on them in a different way that just gets them moving and helps set the table. So I look for better games out of both of those guys. And then maybe you're talking about attacking and engaging the rim protector. It's not exactly the best part of his game, but I wonder if Jaden McDaniels is going to have to mix that up in game 2 as well. He goes 6 of 9 in this game, Legs. And sometimes it feels like a team wants you to play a certain way. You're not going to shoot better than 6 of 9 from Jaden McDaniels. And it didn't work. And I think there's something too. You're going to have to take that shot. If they're going to guard you like this, you're going to have to take it. But you're also going to have to put pressure on them. If they're willing to live with that, there's probably a reason. And you have to find ways to attack closeouts, get into the teeth of the defense, and swing the ball quickly. And that's a lot to ask of Jaden McDaniels, but I think it might be important in this series.
I love that. Let's break down the raw numbers. Adam, the 3 guys we're talking about are the 3 leading scorers. Anthony Edwards, Karl-Anthony Towns, Jaden McDaniels, 3 leading scorers in the playoffs. They combined to take 30 threes. 30.
Wow. Oh, my God.
60% of their field goal attempts were 3-point shots. And we're talking about Anthony Edwards. You can make a case as the best athlete in the league, or one of them, certainly. Karl Anthony Towns, the best thing about him and why he's so tough is he's got this combination of power game with his body and his drives, and he finishes through contact well with the ability to shoot threes. And then Jaden McDaniels, who's this long, bouncy athlete. Those three guys that I just described, 60% of their shots were threes, 30 between the three of them. Those three guys took 5 more threes than Dallas's entire team.
Right.
And so to your point, there's got to be a better balance struck in that. Now, look, I'm making it sound easy because I'm not out there staring against 5 guys that are in the lane.
Yep,
right? So
exactly.
I don't know. By the way, if I saw that, I would be thrilled if I saw that defense because I'm going to get some shots in the wings and corners, right? But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the top of the food chain for the Timberwolves. Those 3 guys. And there was just no balance, not enough balance in their games. Far too many perimeter shots. And I guarantee you, listen, that's the first thing that they talked about after the game. That's the first thing that jumps out when those box scores got handed out around the locker room. The first thing they talked about in the film session today is that exact point. Guys, we can't take 49 threes and 42s when we've got a size and athletic advantage on this team. And that's where it's going to begin. That's where we look for the adjustment at the start of game 2 and see what – it's one thing to say it. How do they pull it off? That's what I'm interested in.
Me as well. Let's hit a break so we can touch on this other series really quickly. But I'm encouraged for Dallas. I think if you're Dallas, like I said, the process and the result was great in game 1. And that's a big win for you. Now the onus is on the Timberwolves, who I think are one of the lessons you learn when it's your first deep run to the playoffs is how different every series is. I think they got a tough lesson in that in game 1. Real quick, I want to tell you guys about Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair that matches your style, and they probably have a style in your favorite team's colors. So check them out. You want to head on over to get this exclusive deal for our listeners. Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code AC35 for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. That's 35% off when you use the code AC, like ALLCITY, AC35. Also want to tell you about the presenting sponsor today, which is DraftKings Sportsbook. We're this close to crowning an NBA champion. And with the action heating up on the court, it's even hotter on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New to DraftKings, listen up. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500. Just deposit at least $5, and you'll get a bonus bet back equal to your first bet if it doesn't hit. If you're a Mavs fan, and we have a lot of Mavs fans in the chat feeling very confident about their team right now, well, you can still get plus odds on the Mavericks winning the title. They look really good in game 1 of the conference finals. Is that a sign of things to come? If so, lay down a bet here, and you'll be cashing that bet in about 6 weeks' time. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code ALLNBA. That's code ALLNBA for new customers to get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500 if your first bet doesn't hit. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or in West Virginia, visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. One no-sweat bet per new customer. Issued as one bonus bet based on amount of initial losing bet. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/bball for eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
All right, back here, segment 2 of the All-NBA show. Remember, we're live 4 times a week right here on our YouTube channel. If you're watching on Twitter, head over to our YouTube channel. It's got a better video quality, and you can hop in the chat and send your questions or comment along with people as we break these things down. Legs, I don't know which game was better, game 1 of the West or game 1 of the East. They were both fantastic, but game 1 of the East had the more bizarre ending. The Pacers had this one in the bag. There were no fewer than 3 or 4 brutal mistakes late in this game that if you just don't make any one of those, you win this game, no questions asked. But they made all of them in a row. Rarely do you see a choke job that bad. You allow the Celtics to get a 3-pointer in the quarter from Jaylen Brown, and he knocks it down. Let's just talk about the ending real quick here. What happened? Because, yes, it's a young team. Tyrese Halliburton's a young player, but he's not a mistake-prone guy. The mistakes he made down the stretch of this were beneath him.
I don't even know where to begin with the number of things that they did that contributed to this. I think for me, like some of the turnovers he had that were unforced without really a lot of pressure on him as a ball handler are just not top tier point guard plays. You just can't. You got to have better command of your handle in a pressure situation. I know it's Drew Holiday, but I'm not talking about if he's up in you, man, and turning you. That's not what we're talking about. He had space on 2 of those turnovers that he had near half court. They were big plays in the game. But Adam, despite whatever Tyrese Halliburton did in that situation, can we just focus for a second on that inbound play? Because that's what really we're talking about here. You get the stop you need. You outlet the ball. Halliburton has it. Tatum runs over, fouls him. Take the ball out of bounds. Now, there's lots been made. Should have called timeout. Rick Carlisle admitted that. Get these guys organized exactly how you want it. They elect not to. So you go to a set that I'm sure they practice and they run, but I'll say this, that's a weird place to take the ball out of bounds. Halfway up the sideline in the backcourt is not some place you normally take the ball out of bounds in a pressure situation. You are normally taking it out on your baseline or at midcourt. So the spacing of it and the look of it right off the bat was a little bit different. And as it played out, I think it might have affected Tyrese Halliburton in particular's decision-making and where he went to get open. He didn't walk into Holiday to create space. He just ran to the corner, the deep corner. And Nembhard looked at him and was like, man, that's a tight window. Drew Holiday's right on you. You never even separated from him. Neesmith ran up the sideline toward like the front court. He was like out. He was like a decoy. So that leaves us with Pascal Siakam at half court on Jaylen Brown. And I know he grabbed his jersey. I hear you. It was a minimal grab, and that's not going to get called in that situation. Sorry. Here's the problem I have with Siakam. He ran straight down the middle of the floor at the very end. By the time the count is at 3.5, Nembhard's starting to get nervous. Siakam ran straight from the midcourt circle, straight at the rim, and at the very end, he sort of veered closer to the ball. You have to take a direct line approach to the basketball. You're 6'10". Give him a better target. That's a 30-foot pass that he's throwing toward his own basket. And you don't have any space there. Jaylen Brown closed the gap, gets the deflection, goes off Siakam. Game. Adam, you're talking about the most basic fundamental thing there is in basketball. Inbound the ball.
Yep.
Accept the foul and go make a free throw or two. Either one or two, the game's over. And you just stole game one on the road. Not even stole. You outplayed them down the stretch to get that win, and it's yours, rightfully. You're up 1-0, right? Nope, wrong. We're going to go ahead and botch this inbound, and then Boston made bigger plays offensively in the overtime. But that's what it comes down to. Let's talk about all the other mistakes, and I swear, that inbound play trumps all of those added up together because you're literally now 8 seconds away from winning. Just get it in. Get it in. Someone catch the ball on my team and take this foul and go make a free throw. And it's over. And they couldn't do that. So it's brutal, man. I know. I guarantee none of those guys slept after the game. And the next day was awful watching the film. By today, you're starting to feel better. And by tonight, you're going to feel a lot better because here's at the end of the day, you played to a style that you like, and so many things you did well in that game offensively, you're going to be able to do that throughout the series. Cut down on the turnovers, 22 of them that led to 32 points. That's not even like real numbers. 32 points off turnovers to a team like Boston, you can't survive that. And yet you had the game won despite all of that. Cut down on the turnovers and hope and assume that Drew Holiday doesn't look like a 30-point scorer in this league. If you do those two things, you're going to be in a great spot. Yeah, man, make better. So I think by tonight, Adam, they're mentally going to feel a lot better. But the first 36 hours are brutal after something like that. I think though Rick Carlisle and this group's pretty tough. I think they'll come back, and I think they're going to be ready to go, and they're going to operate offensively the way they have pretty much against everybody all year.
So that's actually how I feel about that game in this series is I wanted to see if the Pacers could do something to the Celtics that made them uncomfortable, and they did. I actually think they outplayed them by a good margin in this game. They blew it at the end with some horrible decision-making in the final minute. But I actually thought the Pacers looked more comfortable in this game than Boston did for all the way through it. Not even in just like a stop, they made a run or whatever. I just thought they looked more comfortable. And so I look at that and I go, all right, if you can get over the heartbreak of dropping a game, if you can have a repeat performance of that but get the win, then you can go home knowing, hey, they couldn't stop us. Nembhard, by the way, your guy had some big shots down the stretch, but those shots were available to him for a reason. And I think that is so that's my big takeaway here is I look at it and I go, okay, game 2 is tonight. If the Pacers look like that again but get a win, everything from game 1 washes away and you go 2 games in, Pacers have looked better for a majority of the series so far on the road. And that would be a huge win. Do you agree? And why did they look so comfortable in game 1?
I completely agree with what you just said. And actually, I just did 4 hours of TV and I wish I had made that point because I first of all, we had, of course, which I hate. I like predicting series. I hate predicting game by game. There's a reason I believe who's going to win the series, man. I don't know how it's all going to play out all the time. And people, they want you to make picks. So you make picks. I make picks. It's part of the job. I get it. I picked the Pacers to win the game. To your point, if you think about it, if they do it again and you get up, because they've scored 115 points 11 times in the postseason. To put it in perspective, Boston is the second highest scoring team in the NBA. These are the top 2 scoring teams. Boston's only done that 3 times. Like, that's the level that Indiana's playing at offensively. Right? They've had some duds. They got beat bad a couple times. Milwaukee series, they got blown out by the Knicks 1 game. But for the most part, it looks the same all the time. And so for them to get to this number that they did, 117 points of regulation, 128 in the game, and you do it again, you get to 115, you got 60 at halftime, something like that. It starts to get to the point where you go, you know what? Unless Porzingis injects himself into this series and has an impact, like with some of the paint stuff that Indiana gets, which is very possible, by the way. It's a big factor in this series. Unless that happens, you're going, wow, Indiana is going to keep doing this. So can Boston, match this all the time offensively? Because what if Tatum has a really rough shooting night one night and they're so reliant on Tatum and Brown? And what if that happens one night and Indiana just humming along? No matter what, man, we don't stop playing. We don't stop coming. This is what it looks like every night. And it doesn't have to be Halliburton and Siakam all the time either. It's everybody. Everybody's comfortable. And if they get that again, Adam, and they win the game this time because they make the plays they have to in the fourth quarter, I think you're right, man. A little bit of doubt starts to creep in. Like, whoa. Now we got to go on the road and play this team. And we haven't really done anything to slow them down yet. I think that's a great point, and that's what I'm looking for tonight. And by the way, that obviously, if I think they're going to win the game, and then make this a long series, I think they are going to operate like that offensively tonight.
And let me rephrase, because somebody, I think made a great point. When I say that Indiana was in control, they weren't in control. Boston was with them. What it was, and we were actually texting each other during this game, what it was is the Pacers' offense never slowed down. Now, their defense never stepped up, right? They weren't getting stops themselves. But you kind of think as the game goes on, like at some point, the Celtics will just get enough stops to open up a 20-point lead because the Pacers never allowed that. They scored almost every time down court, it felt like. And they would take a big punch. Somebody on the Celtics would hit a big shot, and you think, oh, man, that's going to be tough. Pacers would just come right back and get another shot and make it. And I love the way the Pacers play. They play fast. They play loose. They play with confidence. They share the ball. But this is the question I have for them. They also make shots, and there's a freedom you play with when you play that style where you have a little bit more confidence because the green light's always on for everybody. But once you lose a game, and if you get behind in a second one, those shots become a lot tougher. That process, that loose style of play becomes tougher because now you're starting to think it's not just a game, it's the series. We go down 0-2 as the series over. And that's what I'm looking at from this young Pacers team is because they choked away that game 1, do the shots get tight and does that disrupt everything? Because they are a team that if the wheels come off, it's going to be 30 points, in my opinion. So can they keep that momentum where they just stay in the game with offense all game and find opportune moments to get stops?
That's what the mystery is going to be. And we're going to find out tonight. And here's what's interesting. The line on the game was like 12. And if you took the 12, that was gone in 3 minutes. It was 12-0, right? Yeah. So if you bet it, at that point, it looking great, right? So it was gone that fast. Now think about the punch they got hit with. The start of that game. Now, and some people, my gosh, they overreact so badly to that, like in terms of how this game's about to go. I'm like, come on, man, 3 minutes in, this is a prolific offensive team they're playing. They're going to get their rhythm. It was tied at halftime. It was gone by halftime. They'd erased all of that. And now it's like, okay, now let's see what the adjustments are. One of the reasons I'm obviously high on Indiana, but I still pick Boston to win the series. And the reason at the end of the day that I said they're going to win the series, and this is with or without the Porzingis factor, was because at the end of the day, Boston has the ability, I think, to clamp down and be really special defensively for stretches of games. They're not on the level of Minnesota. I don't think they're on the level of Dallas defensively, even though they've got individual defenders that say they should be. But when they need to, for 3 or 4 minutes at a time, they impact the game at a higher level defensively than Indiana. And that's why I thought ultimately, if these are tight games, Boston's going to be able to get stops at even if it's just 3 or 4 of them in the fourth quarter, whatever the timing of them is, they're more likely to do that than Indiana because of their athletes and their switchability and all that. And so that to me is why I would still lean their way. But I'm telling you, man, if Indiana comes out and cooks again tonight, and they're
sends
humming,
a huge message. Yeah,
they're humming. And now I'm going, wait a second, man. Like, are they going to be able to do that to this team? And like I said, the other factor, Drew Holiday had 28 points. If you're Rick Carlisle and you're looking at that and your coaching staff, you're going, well, we got to give up something. His high game in the playoffs before last night was 18. 28's a big difference, big jump over that. And he was incredible last night. So if you're Rick Carlisle and the coaching staff, are you thinking like, okay, let's make a little bit of adjustment on Drew? Or are you thinking like, well, he's not going to do that again. Let's do everything the same way, except take care of the ball better throughout the game. Obviously, take care of the ball better late. And then Drew Holiday won't be as good. And there you go. There's your formula. Everything else can be the same. And we're going to be just fine. And I think that's probably where Rick Carlisle is.
I agree. Emma, you can hit that outro music. We had to cut it short today because we both have places we got to be, unfortunately, but we are back tomorrow. I will say, just as a final point on that Pacers series, Game 1, it's like Uno legs. Game 1 was like a draw 2, which means that the Celtics played a draw 2 on the Pacers. They stole the game late, and it hurts. But you can play a draw on top of that, make it a draw 4 if you flip the script tonight and get a win. It's almost like you not only flip the momentum, you double it in the flip, because now it's like we're going home and we played 2 great games on the road and we know we can score against this team the rest of the series. That's how I view it. That's why Game 2 tonight should be great. And then we're back tomorrow to break it all down for you and preview Game 2 in the Wolves series. So it should be another great one. Legs, great stuff today. Thanks again.
You got it, Adam. Look forward to it.
Everybody have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.